Inside the film room, things aren't always happy. Movies are subjective, and people don't always agree. Sometimes these disagreements can't be settled on their own. Sometimes they need to be handled in cinema court.
Welcome to a special episode of Inside the Film Room, the first ever cinema court trial. We're here, Zach Goins, Jake Lawler, as always. And today we're pleading our cases on something near and dear to our hearts. We're talking Harry Potter. Which Harry Potter movie is best and which is worst? Because it has recently come to my attention that Jake and I don't have the same opinion. That's usually we do. So this is why we're airing some grievances here. And, we're going to be breaking it down because I think one thing constitutes a great Harry Potter movie, and Jake thinks it's something very different. So today we're pleading our cases to cinema court.
We won't be breaking down the entire franchise, but instead we'll be focusing on one movie in particular, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Now, for me, it's my favorite of the series, but for Zach, it's the worst of them all. Today, you'll hear our arguments, and it's up for you to decide. We'll each start with opening statements before launching into an all-out debate. Cinema Court is in session.
All right, opening statements. Jake, let it rip. Defend Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Now, I've been not really defending, but I've been a fan of this film for nearly a decade now, and I wasn't aware that I was quietly being usurped by a friend of mine. Now, I won't get into specifics about which friend this was or about the terrible facial hair he has on his head right now, but
objection, Your Honor. Objection.
All of that is besides the point. We're here to talk about one movie and one movie in particular. That is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Now, we have the best actor in the entire series, Alan Rickman, full-fledged, given the ability to act, given a full-fledged role in the entire film throughout the duration of the film. And we finally get to see exactly who he is, what he's capable with, and just the tremendous tour de force that he is on screen. In addition, one of the great Harry Potter scenes of all time is towards the end when Dumbledore and Harry Potter team up to find the first Horcrux together. Not the first Horcrux that we've seen, but the first Horcrux together. It is a legendary scene reminiscent of The Lord of the Rings, and it's truly breathtaking on screen. Now, going on Harry Potter and Dumbledore as well, their relationship is at its peak right here. It is unbelievably spectacular. To be able to see kind of exactly why Dumbledore cares so much and why sometimes he doesn't care so much. And to realize that, Harry Potter does, he has a role to play in all this stuff as well. And you're finally figuring out the world in which we see. And the last thing I'll say is that the consequences are so real, especially towards the end of the film when we see Dumbledore getting killed by Snape, which of course is like one of the most shocking moments on screen, one of the most shocking moments in the book. And, we get to see it full-fledged here. Now, I know they deviated quite a bit from the book, but it worked out incredibly well on screen. It worked out incredibly well visually. It was beautiful, wonderful, amazing.
All right. I've noted some things that I'm going to go back on later, but let's get things started with this opening statement. I love this movie. I love all Harry Potter movies. There's no such thing as a bad Harry Potter movie. However, there is a worst, and it's right in front of you. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince is objectively the worst film in the franchise.
Wow.
Why? Think of the sixth book. It's dark. It's mysterious. It's depressing. The stakes are high, like you said, and there's a sense of urgency. This tone is completely brushed aside in exchange for a high school romantic comedy centered around who's dating who. That's what we get here in this movie. There's a serious disconnect between the overall tone of the film and its source material. Yes, the relationship drama, the romance, the general horniness, if you will, is an integral element in the book, but it's the only element in the movie. Again, this is still a good movie. If it were a standalone film, there wouldn't be many issues. But it's not. It's an overarching narrative based on revered texts, and this is arguably the best book of them all. and it doesn't do this movie, does not do that source material justice.
Fair. That was good. Eloquently put.
All right. So with that being said, with those opening statements out there, I think it's only right that we launch into all-out discussion, attack, evidence, bringing it to the stand, and let's argue here, because you said some great things, some stuff I want to go back on, and I hope that you think the same. You're going to tear apart my argument, because this is going to be heated. There's let's just get that out there right away. This is going to be intense.
Present your evidence, sir.
Evidence number one, the biggest thing here, you talked about it a little bit, but this is just the justification of it. This movie cuts too many important moments. I mean, I know you're in a book, it's 600 plus pages, and you've got to fit it down into 2.5 hour movie, but there's too many things here. You talked about Harry and Dumbledore's relationship and it being at the peak. Yes, that's true in the book, but it's not true in the movie. We've got the gaunt, pensive memories, learning about Tom Riddle's upbringing and his parents and his relatives and everything. That's nowhere to be found here. And that's integral to understanding the Horcruxes and who Voldemort is, what his motivation is. It like normalizes him from being this mysterious supernatural monster to then instead being some sort of human person that's just been alone, they're insecure. And then on top of that, that's what's wrong with Harry and Dumbledore here. Because like you said, there's so many instances where you see them bond, but instead we get one trip to the Pensive for a young Tom Riddle, and then they go to the cave at the end. Like you don't see them getting to know each other and really developing that relationship here in the movie. You hear that?
That's fair. I will say this though. While the book had, of course, a lot more time because it is a book and, you have a lot of time to flesh these things out. And while it had a differing dynamic in terms of their relationship, I think that this is pretty on par with how the film has treated their dynamic. Wouldn't you say? I would say that, throughout the majority, at least in the latter half of the films, at least the latter half of that portion, they have been, very much sort of like teacher, student, professor, pupil, mentor, follower type deal. And this is the first time where we actually get to see, with the exception of maybe, the good moments in Chamber of Secrets or the good moments in Sorcerer's Stone, where we actually get to see them coalesce and figure out who they are and how they work together. In the beginning, when they go visit Horace Slughorn, they share kind of a very kind of a quiet and resourceful and reserved conversation. And then, again, towards the end, and these are just moments spruced throughout. While, the moments about him kind of discovering who the Half-Blood Prince is and using the textbook to kind of achieve every objective that he wants. And Dumbledore you can very well argue that he's using Harry as a pawn, because he truly is. But understanding that relationship and making it more mature and making it in a sense that where you can fully understand the reasoning behind and the severity behind the actions as well, is that, Dumbledore and Voldemort, that dynamic is not just some like Saturday morning cartoon. If Voldemort wins, they lose everything. And I think that, they very much understand that, and you begin to kind of peel back the layers of why Dumbledore is so reserved, because he's expecting so much of Harry, because that's what it's going to take for them to win.
I just think that is drawing from the book, that like everything that you talk about, I totally agree with in regards to the book, but we just never really get to see that in the movie, because like you said, at the end of 5 in general, Dumbledore and Harry do not have, that's the year where Dumbledore tries to separate himself to protect Harry. And that doesn't happen because but then in this one, that's where they truly develop. And I feel like that's good. I didn't recognize the Horace Slughorn stuff earlier. I'll concede that point to you. I think that's the right word. But I mean, I just don't think that, I think a lot of it hinges on the memories and those private sessions that they have. And we just really miss all that. And like, on top of that, there's just other stuff that's cut as well. Like the one of those is the trip to the cave, where they go, not the actual trip, but when they go back, there's the memory to why Tom Riddle has this cape. And so at the end, like, not having seen that Horcrux stuff, you just think they go to some random cave that Dumbledore happened to find. Like, I would have liked to have seen that. And then I think just it's truly the biggest casualty is not any Tom Riddle stuff. It's that Harry and Dumbledore stuff. And then you also get Dumbledore's funeral doesn't appear there. That gets cut too. And that's like the huge emotional punch at the end of the movie, that instead you just get the raising of the wands, which is great. That's great. But then the whole thing is just seeing everyone come together to end it. And then in the final battle, like, you don't get that as well, because in the movie you just get Harry and Dumbledore on the tower without explanation. There's no dark mark over it to lure them back there or anything like that. But it's in the book, there's like a full-on battle. I understand this one though, because they wanted to save that for 7, but still, that's just the little tiny details here. Like, Harry wasn't even petrified at the top of the tower. He was just standing there letting it happen. And you know that that's not how Harry would act if he had been able. It's just little things like that like the little things, and a football coach saying here, the little things add up to a big thing, you know?
That's fair. I you know what, and I think that you do raise some good points there, and I do think that it's one of those things that you just kind of sort of have to consider in terms of the elements. I would say for me, I mean, you know, I'll be honest, like, I haven't read the books in quite some time, but, you know, rewatching all of the films and rewatching them recently and really trying to figure out where I rank them and where I think that they are in the best of my mind. You know, Half-Blood Prince really surprised me. It was something that, you know, I liked, but I don't really remember quite liking as much. And I think that leading into my second piece of my first piece of evidence is really Snape. You know, I think that, you know, he is really, well, he's not in it nearly as much as Harry Potter or Dumbledore. I do think that we do get the most intimate and the most visceral moments from him. And I think that, tried and true, he's the most talented actor in the entire franchise. Instantly. I mean, I think that he is a captivating screen presence. Alan Rickman, he's been incredible in so many things. And, you know, people saying that this is his best role are really, you know, not wrong, because I think that Snape, he embodied the role. And I think that there is no one that we think of more outside of like the core characters as someone that contributed to the legacy of Harry Potter on screen than Alan Rickman did.
I agree with that. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
And no, you're good. And we getting the chance to see, you know, not only why he's called the Half-Blood Prince, and getting to understand that separate side of him, as well as understand sort of the troubling dynamic that he has in relationship with the Death Eaters. I mean, you know, the first scene we see that he makes the unbreakable vow, and, you know, it's not until, you know, 2 movies until we figure out that it's really kind of an undercover plot between him and Dumbledore. But, you know, he is really at his best. He's at his finest. And I think that, you know, being someone that's sort of like an outside antagonist, but always a central character in the plot, and then have him cemented in that role with the final blow of killing Dumbledore where Harry watches, is truly something that is just astounding. And I think it's astounding for so many reasons. Right.
But the thing, I totally agree with that. Rest in peace, Alan Rickman, incredible actor, incredible Severus Snape. But you don't get that. You get him in the movie, but the whole reasoning behind why he is the Half-Blood Prince, you don't get that. He just says at the end, I'm the Half-Blood Prince, or that's me, or whatever. You dare use my own spell against me. There's literally no backstory of his mother, which you get in the book, of like why he is why he started calling himself that. Like, it's literally the title of the book and the movie, and that's not explained in any justification here, which is just another going back. I think that's my biggest point, is that just like the little things that were cut that like I said, add up to the big things. And I mean, I think that when you talk about all the things that are not here, you have to think about the stuff they did add in. Like, I think the fact that they had the audacity here to add in the Burrow attack scene over Christmas, like, that does not happen in the book. And they're taking away these integral parts of the book and adding in some made up scene in the movie when they have this this excuse that they're pressed for time, so that's why they had to make other cuts. Like, I think that that's entirely not justified whatsoever. And again, like you said, I think it comes down to looking at it from a perspective of a movie versus an adaptation. Because for me, you said you hadn't read the books in a long time, but like the way I did it was I was rereading all of the books. And so then I would finish the book and then watch the movie directly after. So I had all of these things fresh in my head of what I was looking for, what I remembered immediately after having read. And so that's why these things stood out more intensely than I guess you had after not having read the book in a while.
Yeah, I think I was really just about to kind of counterpoint that, we're not talking about which Harry Potter book or which Harry Potter film is most true to the book or the best adapted. I think that really, the core part of the argument here is which Harry Potter film is the best. Now, I mean, I think that, it's a fair point to say that, all of these integral parts in the book helped flesh out the film and they chose to neglect. But, granted, we are talking about within the confines of a 2.5 hour spectrum, regardless of, how the book wove. We're talking about how this segued from Order of the Phoenix, the film, into Deathly Hallows Part 1, and talking about this just in the confines of it alone. And I think,
I think that you can't separate that though. Like it's so hard with something like Harry Potter where you can't, in my opinion, you can't look at it and be like, you can't separate that and look at it as just a pure movie and then as an adaptation of the book. They're so interwoven that it's impossible to do that,
I think as a franchise for sure, but obviously they took a lot of liberties with this film, and like I said, I haven't read the book, so I think maybe if I was fresh off of rereading them, I would probably be in the same boat, or at least more willing to kind of acquiesce to the points that you're making. But with all that being said, I think that me coming from experience of not having read them in a while and then just rewatching them through, and watching Order of the Phoenix and then coming into this and seeing so many elements, I think it really is the most intricate film, with the exception, I would say, Prisoner of Azkaban, which of course is like, definitely vacillates between first and second for me always.
Now that's something we can work with there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that one's excellent as well. But I think that this one, because it does a great balance of the humor and the darkness, but it doesn't lose either. And I think that when it needs to be dark, it's really dark. And I think towards the end, it's not like it's lost itself on that train. I think that.
See, that's where I disagree with that, because I think it had I don't think they balanced the tones well at all here. I think it was far too much on the lighthearted romance fun. Like, this is the funniest movie in the series, in the franchise, and that works if you're looking for that. But I just, again, it's nothing that I haven't said before of just like the matching the source material and like the tone of this is one of the darkest books, and this movie's PG, and they're making jokes about hooking up and whatnot, like, which that's certainly in the book, but the book balances it, whereas I didn't get that with this movie.
It's fair.
But going back to what you said about Prisoner of Azkaban, I think we can find some common ground here, unless you have any further arguments about Half-Blood Prince.
No, not really. I mean, I think that, it really is one of those things that, like, if you are sort of like a tried and true fan, and, coming from a place where the books are fresh on your mind and you start noticing, and I think that's really with everything. I think that, if you go into, like, for example, when Ready Player One came out, I had just read the book and I was watching Ready Player One. I was like, they changed that. And I think that makes it difficult for you to actually just sit back and kind of like understand the creative liberties they took with it. Yeah. So I think that it really is sort of just like a difficult thing. Like, when you just come off of the original material into the adaptation, it's difficult to kind of separate yourself and kind of understand the choices they made instead of just seeing that they made changes, you know.
I totally get that. It just depends on the mindset that you're bringing in, whether you want it to be a strict adaptation or whether you're willing to give up some things. But I would say, let's since we are in court here, I would like to counter something and propose a settlement. Going back to your previous statement, can we agree that Prisoner of Azkaban is the best movie? And in exchange, I will concede that Half-Blood Prince is not the worst, that in fact Chamber of Secrets is the worst. Are you willing? I don't have to get you to suddenly have me love Half-Blood Prince, but I will just admit that it is not the worst.
You know, I think we definitely can admit that. I think that I'm definitely willing to agree to that. I think that coming in and watching Prisoner of Azkaban again, I was like, this is the movie to beat. And then Half-Blood Prince came, and I was like, wow, that was staggering. And you know, I think that if I rewatched them, like if I watched one and watched one back to back, probably Prisoner of Azkaban would come out on top, just because of you know, Cuarón's direction throughout the film, and I think that you know, everything with Remus is just phenomenal and serious. I mean, that, you know, they are two of the greatest characters, both in the books and in the film, and to, you know, get to see their dynamic so much is, yeah. So I'll definitely concede that.
Okay, let's talk about Prisoner while we're here then, just a little bit more in depth. But like, I mean, I think for me, this has always been my number one, and like you said, a lot of it has 4 words to do with it, and it's Alfonso Cuarón and Sirius Black. Yeah. Those are, and then you can throw in Remus Lupin if you want to make it 6. But I think this is so good because it's the first time in the series, in the franchise, that things really branch off. You know, you got those first 2, Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, that are Christopher Columbus, have very much the same feel. Those are like cookie cutters. They are exact word for word adaptations of the books. And that's why Chamber of Secrets is like nearly 3 hours, because they didn't cut anything. But then here, it's the first time that you get like a unique feeling movie. It goes off in a new direction. You've got a new Dumbledore, and they're finally cutting stuff. They're forced. This was a little bit of a longer book compared to 1 and 2. So instead of doing everything that is like, whether it's Harry or somebody else putting it all in there, this is just Harry's perspective, which marks a first time doing that for this franchise. And I think that's things get different here. They get artsy. They get a little weird. Like, it just gives a new identity to each movie, and that's something that you see carry forward throughout the rest of the movies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, it's truly spectacular. I think that, and you know, what's really special about it is that like everyone gets a moment in it, and you know, it feels very sort of kind of like Endgame, Infinity War-esque, you know, where it's like everyone gets like a little chance to shine, whether it's, you know, Dumbledore giving them the time turner, Hagrid with his whole
Buckbeak,
Hagrid with Buckbeak and his whole relationship, you know, Hermione's whole journey with Harry, and I think that
Hermione punching Malfoy in the face,
yeah, which is excellent. And I think that one of the best moments in Harry Potter, similar to one of the great moments in Half-Blood Prince, is in Prisoner of Azkaban with the Expecto Patronus charm, and which is just like amazing. And I think
Expecto Patronum,
and what are they called?
Dementors?
Yeah, the Dementors are like scary as hell, and that's the thing.
Yeah. Like the way that this movie, there's so many things in the 3rd book that seem impossible to do.
Yeah,
and that the Dementors are one of them. They just they nail everything. Whether it's the night bus at the very beginning, like that's talking about it getting weird when they like shrink the faces and stuff and have talking heads. Like that's done perfectly. Like you couldn't have imagined it any better after having read the book. And then on top of that, you've got, like you said, all the time turner stuff. Time travel is so hard to do in movies, and they nailed that.
Oh, it's great.
The whole sequence and everything. The Whomping Willow. Compare the Whomping Willow to the Chamber of Secrets one, where they land the car in it, and it's like a mechanical arm that just goes.
Yeah.
but then you get in the movie in Prisoner of Azkaban, the camera work in that where they're flying around on it, and it's almost like 3D coming at you when Hermione like flies up and they do like the jump rope and stuff. And then on top of that, Patronuses and Dementors, like you said, that's just beautiful stuff.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair concession. I've always been well, now rewatching them, I was like, it was 6-3-8. But I think that in terms of this, I'll definitely concede that Prisoner of Azkaban can reign supreme.
So on the other end of the spectrum, then with Chamber of Secrets, I know this. So this is not a huge. Chamber of Secrets was always 7 out of 8 for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like it was incredible or anything. So I'm willing to let it slip down to 8 in exchange for Prisoner moving up to 1 on the inside the film room rankings. But let's kind of hear what is it that makes it so bad for you, I guess.
I think it's really kind of going back to what you said. I mean, there's not really like a bad Harry Potter film.
Right.
All in all, the series is really good. I just think that there are moments in there that make it difficult to kind of like comprehend and digest. One of them, of course, is Moaning Myrtle. I mean, like,
you're a Myrtle hater. Let it rip.
Yeah, I mean, like when it was funny. I was watching it, and when she came, because I had forgotten that she was a character, and when she came on, I was probably 10 seconds away from turning the movie off, and just completely turning it off. But it's just not as strong as the other ones. I think that we talk about the first one, the magic of Harry Potter captured with the Sorcerer's Stone, and just sort of like the pure Home Alone-esque joy that Christopher Columbus brings to it is something that's really special. Prisoner of Azkaban, of course, is like the standalone. I mean, with the Goblet of Fire, I mean, it's like so much spectacle in there, and I think that there's a lot, there's a lot of great stuff.
I think Goblet of Fire is a great one that is a standalone. Like if you hadn't seen any of them, you can watch that and think that that's an incredible movie. And just like be entertained by it. But like I said earlier, Chamber of Secrets is the longest movie in the whole franchise, and it's the shortest book, or maybe a little right there with Sorcerer's Stone for shortest. And that's because they did that, squeezing every single thing in there, and it drags a little bit. And I mean, I was never super high on it, but again, no bad Harry Potter movies. I would pick the worst Harry Potter movie over most other movies, not gonna lie. But it's not bad. It just gets a little lost in the shuffle, I would say, with the other ones, because kind of like how we talked about with Pixar, that there are so many good movies that being lower on the rankings doesn't make you a bad movie.
Yeah, and I will say that one of the great redeeming qualities of Chamber of Secrets is Kenneth Branagh as Gilderoy Lockhart, which is just like hilariously stupid.
The perfect version of that character. Like, he nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you have on hand or off the top of your mind before we close things out, what your official ranking is, your full ranking?
I would say, I guess with the concession, Prisoner of Azkaban, Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows Part 2. Probably, I'm a huge fan of the first one. Sorcerer's Stone, Goblet of Fire, Deathly Hallows Part 1, Order of the Phoenix, and then Chamber of Secrets.
Okay. I'm pretty similar, I would say, which, again, we're usually similar in most things. That's why this was so striking of a difference here. But for me, it's Prisoner of Azkaban, Hallows Part 2, Sorcerer's Stone, again, huge fan of just starting things off, as you can see by your poster back there. Then Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix, Deathly Hallows Part 1, Half-Blood Prince, then Chamber at the end, I guess. Since
go.
We made an agreement.
I love it. See, this is what happened. This is what can happen in Cinema Court.
In Cinema Court, you can come to agreements on controversial topics and leave the world a better place. Exactly. So, for all you listeners out there, thank you all for tuning in to the first ever Cinema Court from Inside the Film Room. If you have ideas for other divisive movie topics for us that need to be settled in Cinema Court, let us know. We will do our best to cover them. and come to an agreement. Thank you all for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Rate us 5 stars on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. Follow us on all social medias at Inside Film Room. And be sure to tune in next week when we're talking a little bit about Quibi.
Let's
See y'all
go.
next time.